We pray that your presence will be before us and everyone who serves in the decision-making process of our city. We pray for direction which will lead our city to be strong and unified. May we continue the legacy of our founders. May we be granted this day the wisdom to make decisions which will be for the good of our city. We also pray for your special blessing on all those who are working to transform our city and make it a better place to live and work. Amen. If you'd please recognize our nation's flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please.
Mayor Murphy.
Here.
Councilman Wan.
Here.
Councilor Broderick.
Here.
Councilor Elliott.
Here.
Councilor Kennedy.
Here.
Councilor Laurie.
Here.
Councilor Martin.
Here.
Councilor Mendonça.
Here.
Councilor Mercia.
Here.
9 present.
Thank you. At this point, I'd recognize Councilor Mercia.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And congratulations, by the way. You added another piece of jewelry to your body, and we're very proud of and
Not another one, but
congratulations.
One. Yeah. Thank you.
I'd like to offer a moment of silence in darkened chamber for Rita Sheridan, beloved wife of Leo Sheridan Sr. and the matriarch of a well-known family. In September of 2011, Leo and Rita celebrated 59 years of marriage. For many of these years, Rita was an active parishioner of the Sacred Heart Church, a member of the Holy Rosary Sodality, and an avid participant at the weekly Sacred Heart Bingo. Rita is survived by her loving husband, Leo Sheridan Sr., a retired firefighter, her 3 daughters, Linda Gallagher, a Lowell public school nurse, Lisa Slattery, Debbie Gilligan, and her only son, Leo Sheridan Jr., 9 grandchildren, and many, many friends. She was a saint, in my opinion, and she will be truly missed. I'd like to also offer a moment of silence in darkened chamber for Leo Kuchu, loving husband of Tanya, with whom he would have celebrated their wedding anniversary later this month. He was the son of Kathleen Bunny Connors Kuchu and the late former City Councilor Edmund Gus Kuchu. Leo was educated in the local schools, graduating from Bishop Girton High School, class of 1980. He graduated from the University of Lowell in 1987 with a degree in criminal justice. At a young age, Leo worked for the Parks and Recreation Department in the city. While in college, he worked for the United States Post Office in Lowell. He then worked for the Department of Corrections for 22 years and was a former member of the Tactical Unit. Leo retired from the Department of Corrections in August of 2011. Since 2004, Leo worked as a funeral assistant for the McDonough Funeral Home. Besides his wife, Tanya, he is survived by his 3 daughters, Jacqueline, Riley, and Lily, his brother, Steve, his mother, Bunny Kuchu, his 3 sisters, Judy Riley, Amy Gillis, and Lynn Perara, as well as his mother-in-law, Patricia Freitas. He was a great human being, and our sympathy to his family, relatives, and his many friends. And I don't like to belabor the issue, but these are people of importance that have made a contribution to the city, and we didn't meet last week as well. But I'd also like to offer a moment of silence in darkened chamber for Margaret Brady, a lifelong resident of the Upper Highlands and devout communicant of St. Margaret's Church and a well-known member of the community. Margaret graduated from the Academy of Notre Dame in Tingsboro and continued her education, earning a bachelor's degree from State Teachers College and a master's in education from Fitchburg State Teachers College. Margaret taught in the Lowell school system for over 35 years. She was instrumental in establishing the first teachers union and was the first president of the Lowell Teachers Organization. Margaret retired from the Lowell School Department after many years of teaching as a teaching principal at the Pine Street School. Upon her retirement, the school was renamed the Margaret R. Brady School in recognition of her extraordinary dedication to the school children of Lowell. Her favorite quote was this: "I shall pass this way but once. Therefore, any good that I can do or any kindness that I can show, let me do it now, for I shall not pass this way again. Margaret lived by these words, and that says it all about Margaret Brady. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If I could just offer also a few words in memory of Rita Sheridan. Rita lived next door to me for a short time, and certainly she and her husband Leo and her children were committed members of the Sacred Heart Parish, but also very committed to the city of Lowell, to many civic and charitable causes. Her children and Leo, her husband, remain active in very many of those causes still, and they learned that in part from Mrs. Sheridan. So although she has passed, her legacy and her contribution will live on in the work that the members of her family continue to do.
Thank you. Councilor Laurie.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I also know the Sheridan family. A couple of the children worked with me at the Postal Service, her daughter and her son-in-law. I was fortunate enough for many years as a letter carrier to deliver to Mike and Linda Gallagher. And just a great family, and it's a great loss for the city. And Leo Kuchu. Leo did work at the post office. For many years, I lived on Putnam Ave with my wife, right across from Gus and Bunny Kuchu and the children. Just a sad, sad loss for the city. Leo was a great guy. I know I would see him over here at the Songus Center during the hockey games. He was working in the security department over there when I would go over to the hockey games, and you know, I just want to pay my respects to those and their family. Thank you.
Thank you. If you'd please rise in a moment of silence and darken chambers. Moving to the city clerk's portion of the agenda, we have for acceptance minutes of the fiscal year 13 budget vote of June 12th, 14th, and 16th, minutes of the city council meeting of June 26th, minutes of the rules subcommittee of June 26th for acceptance. Motion by Councilor Lloyd.
Question I had on the motions for the meeting from June 26th. At the end of the meeting, I brought up the fact that Brian Gagnon was running to try to make the Olympics, and the minute says he was in the Olympics, and I don't think he qualified, but he did go to the trials. That was a change.
Jinxed him.
Maybe with my luck, I probably did.
Any further corrections? If there be none, motion to accept by Councilor Broderick with the amendment, seconded by Councilor Martin. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? So voted. Next, we have the city manager's portion of the agenda, communications from the city manager, responses to city council motions and requests. Councilor Elliott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We had received a communication, I guess earlier last week, regarding tax bills when tax bills went out, and I received a number of emails and phone calls, Mr. Manager, regarding the increases in the tax bills. And people are pretty upset about it, and even I was receiving calls up to this evening on the increases that were included as part of their tax bills. And I don't understand why these increases were factored in presumably before the budget was set. People don't, many people are living paycheck to paycheck. And I think one of the concerns that I heard was that many people have mortgages and their escrow accounts increase. And they would like to know, they would like to have that money in their bank account rather than in the city's, the city collecting the money. So I think it's a little disingenuous to say that, taxes are going to go up X amount of dollars or a certain percentage, and then people get their tax bills and, they don't understand why. And I don't either. I mean, I understand it's allowable, but when we say taxes are going to go up a certain amount and people read the paper and they watch the meetings and then they get a bill that is much higher, I think it's unfair. People should know what that, if it's going to be factored in, what that's going to be. And that's the issue, that's the concerns that have been brought up. Who makes that policy decision and when is it made?
Mr. Manager?
Well, Councilor, this really wasn't a communication that was in my packet, but I'd be happy to respond to the.
Well, do you not want to talk about it? Because we only meet every 2 weeks, Mr. Manager.
understand.
And we did receive a communication.
Well, you didn't receive a communication from me on this, but I'd be happy to respond to it, and I'm prepared to speak to this tonight. Looking back, obviously, given the fact that we did produce a budget that provided for only a 0.4% increase, and then ultimately there was some cuts made in the budget, and it went to a 0.2%. I think our preference certainly would have been that there hadn't been an increase in that, and so I certainly regret that. On the other hand, the tax bills were produced back at the end of May, well before the budget had been approved, and well before the budget had been submitted, and it was an effort. This decision to go to try to add in some type of increase in the first and second quarters was designed to really smooth things out for people and to actually make the escrow, particularly for the escrow people, to make it more consistent across the board, so their lending agencies would not make adjustments. We did. So that was the purpose of it. When you look back, and I actually have some charts here. The Lowell Sun did a story, I know, this weekend where they contacted a number of councilors and gave you information regarding your tax bill. And so taking a page out of their paper, we did the same thing. And we looked at what people's tax bills have done, each of the councilors, over the last 7 years. And you can see wide disparities quarter to quarter, where initially, particularly in fiscal years 2005, 2006, and 2007, where there were very large tax increases. This was before this administration produced a budget. Why don't you hand those out? Before this administration produced a budget and imposed the cap of the 2.5%, there were very large tax increases that resulted in very large third and fourth quarter bills. And in fact, that produced much more in the way of problems for homeowners and particularly the mortgage companies, which then had these last quarter bills that were artificially high. And they started making adjustments in people's escrows as a result of that. I think the assessor, Ms. LeMay, is here and she can speak to this, and I think she spoke to this in the newspaper article as well, that in fact, since we've tried to smooth things out, the number of calls from the regarding escrow payments has actually decreased dramatically. So that's been the effort that we're trying to make. First, by putting the 2.5% cap on, so that you don't have tax increases of 3%, 6%, or 8% like you had in 5, 6, and 7. And on top of that, we've tried to do this smoothing. Now, again, looking back, my preference would be that we not have added that 2.5%. And I think we're going to revisit that practice and revisit that strategy, and certainly look at trying to fine-tune it more in the future. But as you can see, even for the councilors, you're all going to see, assuming values stay the same, which obviously that is still up in the air, you're going to see something similar to what occurred in fiscal year 2012, where you see a little bit of a drop-off in your third and fourth quarter bills, as opposed to the wide disparities that you saw before. But I appreciate the councilor's question and his viewpoint.
Well, it's what I'm hearing from, I have a job. I work for the people at home. It's not my viewpoint. It's the viewpoint of when people call me and they're upset. I don't know of any other bills, unless people on a payment plan, where they pay ahead of what is actually due. I don't think it's the electric company, I don't think the gas company. I think people just want to know first, up front, what is it going to be, and not get any surprises in the mail, and that's what it caught people by surprise. And I think when people have an escrow account, they have to wait quite some time in order to get that money back, and I think they would prefer to manage their own money. So, and just let people know up front, we're factoring X amount to smooth things out, which, have we looked at going at semi-annual bills? I mean, twice a year?
I actually did consider recently, as you know.
I think, I'll just finish, Mr. Manager. I'm sorry, I did ask you a question, but I think it's very confusing, and one of the emails that I got said, I don't even know exactly what my bill is, because there's an increase, there's the factor, then there's the adjustment, so if you could answer the question, I just wanted to,
If the question is a semi-annual bill, I've actually thought maybe we should look at doing something like that in the future. But I think the quarterly bill works well for people, so that they don't get a big bill just twice a year. Most people that are in escrow, I mean, it is interesting, and I'm not doubting that you've received some phone calls. We've received just a couple of phone calls, a couple of emails on this, and but for one person, most people understand completely, and actually have seemed supportive of this. And in fact, I've received calls saying that just the opposite. They'd rather front load than have it be a surprise with only 6 months to go in the fiscal year. Again, I think we could probably work at making this better, but that was our intent was one that was designed to be positive for the taxpayers, not negative. And so.
Okay, Mr. Manager, maybe you don't understand. There are a lot of people in this city that live paycheck to paycheck. Seniors, working class, and this increase is a lot to them. And those are the people that are contacting me. And maybe other people do support it. I haven't heard one phone call. I get a lot of phone calls and a lot of emails. People stop you on the street. I'm just bringing it forward because that's what their concerns are. But it's paycheck to paycheck. And when there's an increase like this, it hurts. That's all I'm saying.
Councilor Lowry and then Councilor Kennedy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just looking at some of the tax bills here for the other councilors and myself, mine is going to go down the first 2 quarters and then go up. And there's others that do it differently. They'll go up and then come down in the 3rd and 4th quarter. I've received a lot of calls. I'd be having dinner in coffee shops, and people were coming up to me, and I called the assessors. Susan LeMayo does a great job, and she explained the process to me. The taxes is what they're going to be. They are going to go up just a few dollars this year. And I think what I came up with was the problem was just a lack of communications. I think looking back at the past couple of meetings and the budget hearings, we anticipated maybe a $12 or $13 increase for the year. After the budget cuts with the council, we were down to probably $5 or $6. And I think people, and I said this in Lowell, when I was talking to Lowell Moran, I expected to see really not much of an increase. Actually, mine went down for the first 2 quarters. But I think in the future, if we could relay that information during the budget hearings or during a council meeting, the process we're going to use, I think the people will be quite happy at the end of the year what they pay on taxes. But it is a sticker shock when you pick it up and you're looking and you think you're just going to have a few dollar increase, and for some people it was quite large. And but I think it's a communication thing. For years, the taxes went up 2.5%. So people get their tax bills expecting to see a large increase. This year, they expected to see minimal. And I think that was the shock to a lot of people. And maybe in the future, we communicate a little bit better going into the new year.
Mr. Manager.
If I could just, and I know Councilor Kennedy has the floor in a second, but believe me when I tell you that there was no intent to not communicate to the council.
I agree.
That was the tax bills was something that were the furthest from my mind while we were going through the budget process. Not taxes were paramount in my mind, but the tax bills
In my honest
were not.
opinion, no, it wasn't something being hidden. This is something, these jobs are done every day. You know the process, you know the process. The assessors know the process. I don't know the process. The people at home don't know the process. And I'm not suggesting that it was hidden from anyone. I just think that down the road, if we're going to have a minor increase or balance, maybe just explain how the process is done, how the bills go out. And I think this would have alleviated a lot of the problems. People would have expected to see the changes, and it would have been a little bit easier to take. Thank you.
Councilor Kennedy?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you to the city manager. I think that, I don't think, no matter what the circumstances are, that anybody ever likes to see a tax increase. That's just the way it is. And maybe for the past several years, it has gone up 2.5%, but this year is different. And so the point this year is not that there's a 2.5% increase. The point is that that 2.5% increase represents an overtax. In other words, we're taxing people more than we need to. And on principle, that's wrong to do that. And so I'm glad to hear you say that you expect to revisit this in the process by which we do it. Now, I understand that this year there was a new vendor that sent out the bills, and so that the bills had to be sent to the vendor early in order that they all get out on time, and that information was sent at the beginning of June, which was before the council had even taken up the budget. So that's all fine. Nevertheless, we've sent out tax bills, and we're going to be expecting people to pay for the first 2 quarters more than what they owe, more than what they need to pay. And that, to me, is the crux of what is wrong with this. And so I think we should revisit the policy and come up with something new. Maybe we're sending them out too early, or maybe, and I guess I think that probably in this instance, that this one got by the city manager's office, and maybe that's why this all happened. But I don't want to so much focus on what's gone on for the past years or what the history of this has been over the years. Going forward, what can we do so that this doesn't happen again, so that we never again overtax people? And so what I'd like to see is a policy where everything is flat for the next year, and if the city manager anticipates that there's going to be a tax increase, then bring it to the council, even before the budget, and just say, listen, we're going to have to send out the bills early, we're pretty sure there's going to be an increase. Local aid, I think, helps you determine pretty much whether or not taxes are going to go up or they aren't. That's a huge chunk of it. And so you know if the numbers don't look good down in Boston in May or June, that things aren't going to look that rosy up here either when the budget's done. So it just seems to me that if you are pretty certain that there's going to have to be a tax increase, then what you can do is just come to the council, say, well, there's going to have to be a tax increase, we're going to have to do it. But otherwise, the bill should be flat the way it is. And, I don't buy into the whole idea of sticker shock and, people are upset because at the end of the fourth quarter. It all evens out in the end anyways. It's just going to be the same way next year. There's going to be sticker shock in the first quarter if it goes down. So that doesn't hold much water to me. But just once again, just on principle, it's wrong to overtax people, to be charging more than to have people pay taxes that they don't need to be paying. And that to me is what people are upset about. It's not that the increase is so great, it's just that it's more than what you need to pay. And when people read in the paper that there's not going to be a 2.5% tax increase, and that it could very well be, and this was a quote from you, Mr. Manager, that it very well could be, or maybe from Mr. Moses, I'm not sure, but that maybe by the time November comes, there will be 0 tax increase, and then they get a bill that shows a 2.5% increase. They're surprised and wonder what happened. Why did I get a tax increase and nobody else did? And so anyways, if we could get, maybe at the next meeting, if you could have a new policy to the council on how we can handle this, going forward, that would be good. Thanks.
Councilman Johnson and then Councilor Mercia.
Yes, obviously everyone's going to be upset when something defies expectations. So when these bills came out with such a large increase, everybody, of course, questioned what it was. But again, I think it's already been stated, but clearly whatever was overtaxed will be returned in the second and third quarters. If we had, well, I would have preferred not to have this large increase in the first and second quarter, but that just would have meant that the third and fourth would have had to have been higher bills to compensate. Now, some of what's going on, I looked at with the 9 as samples. I don't know if it's typical or not, but it seems like the vast majority of them, even the first quarter bills compared to last year's first quarter bills, seem to be less. So if they're using the first quarter bills to calculate escrow and project forward, it's still going to appear that this year's bill is lower than last year's. For most of us, I don't know if it'll be typical. But either way, they usually do that calculation once a year with whatever experience they have on hand. So I'm hoping it won't impact people greatly. It might impact them somewhat. There was mention of doing semi-annual billing, which is what the city used to do years ago. I would think that that would not be a good idea because those bills still go out in July, which mean the July and January bills would double in order not to have an October or an April bill. So once again, we'd be asking everyone to pay earlier 1/4 of their bill in each case. So I'd prefer to just stick with the quarterly bills. That evens out what they have to pay for both them and their escrow accounts. I would support going back to your administrative policy as to how this is done in the future, and especially when you know that the increase is going to be less than the 2.5%. So whatever you're planning on budgeting for the increase, it should be no higher than that. And then hopefully if there are cuts to the budget, then they can be adjusted in the second and third, and we won't see the big jump. Now, there will be times, as in past years, where the 2.5% did occur, and that's what we see in the early years of these charts, was that because it wasn't factored in, we wound up with a big jump in the third and fourth quarter bills.
Okay.
Well, if the manager would like to.
And if I may, Councilor, I just want to stress the point that in the first 3 years here that you see 5, 6, and 7, it was a tax increase of greater than 2.5%. It was a tax increase of 3.3%, 6.5%, I think, and 8.6%. So that's why you see what's such large, and that we weren't doing the
Right.
modified building at that point.
So if we had done that back then it wouldn't have been as great a disparity between the quarters or the halves of the years. So that, I mean, having that as experience, they said, how can we smooth it out? Well, if we factor in some increase going forward, then we can smooth it out. I think what happened here was it was factored in, but we're not going to have the increase. And so it's unfortunate, and hopefully we'll learn from it. My question is the first and third quarters the only quarters we can change this, or can there be an adjustment made in the second quarter billing?
No, it's there's the estimated bills, which are the same, and then the final bills, the third and fourth, which are the same.
Okay, so that's,
Correct.
so that's the semi-annual billing. We're just splitting that into two pieces.
Correct.
So those are just 2 times a year we can change that.
Correct.
All right, that's unfortunate. It would have been nice to smooth that out a little more, but by having the second quarter bill be adjusted. But if we can't do that, then people should just know that the full year tax bill will only increase what we had publicized, and there'll just be a larger decrease for the second and third, and which would mean that because it's compensating, even if it were flat the following year, the first quarter would be a little higher than the second and third quarter. Just looking out.
Right.
So,
Right, for the average taxpayer, the increase over last year's taxes on a quarterly basis are $17 some odd each of the first 2 quarters, and then they'll drop down to by $13, $14 below on the last couple of quarters. What happened here too is the last fiscal year, we included the increase the first couple of quarters, and then in fact we used that state aid money to knock the tax rate down to like 1.2%, the tax increase down. So that's why the third and fourth quarter bills last year were even lower than they would have been because we were going up the first couple and then it went down in the.
so if the changes in property values remain constant, which is not always very likely, right now we have a high first quarter. Second quarter is going to be low. Next year's first quarter would be exactly in between if there were a flat, no tax increase going into that year.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Mercia?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I, too, Mr. Manager, received a large amount of calls. A lady called me and said that her quarter bill went up $55. Another lady on a fixed income called me and said her bill went up $81. And I don't think $81 in a quarter is just a few dollars. I think it's a lot of money. And I had concerns with questions because I tried to explain to the people just the way that I kind of understood it. I didn't have all the answers that you're giving us this evening, and I told some of these people to look at the council meeting tonight because I knew that Susan LeMay, the city assessor, would be here. And they told me we don't have cable. So they don't have cable. So I hope they're relying on the newspaper anyways to at least try to give the message that we're hearing here this evening. Because my first question would have been, in anticipation of this tax increase of 0.02%, did you not instruct or communicate with the assessor to not go the full 2.5%? And you said that it went out before the budget, the tax was established, the increase was established or whatever. So typically that's not our fault. So my second question would have been, and I'm understanding that the third and fourth quarter of the tax quarters will be decreased to make up the difference. And I said to myself, well, why can't the second quarter, why can't that happen in the second quarter? I still can't seem to fathom why it can't happen in the second quarter. Everything that Councilor Kennedy said, I completely agree with him 100%. Revisit the policy, see if we can change that this was overtaxed. I'm believing this is overtaxed. I had another call for a woman much younger that works very hard every day. Not that the other people don't, but they're on fixed income, Social Security. This lady is not, but she has a mortgage. She puts her mortgage money into an escrow, and the taxes come out of that. For the past 2 years, she's had an overage of $351, which she could not get back until the very end of all those quarters, which led her to believe and understand that I could have used that money during the year. It was better in my pocket to use what the expenses I had than to leave it in a bank just sitting there till the very end and I couldn't touch it. I felt bad for her. I never called her back, but I did get her message. Yeah. This is really overtaxing, in my opinion. I'm sorry, but it is overtaxing, and people were very shocked. And I say shocked because they must have read in the paper that the taxes wouldn't go up only 0.02%. In fact, in October or November, when the cherry sheet comes in, we may not have a tax increase at all, and yet in the next 2 quarters, they're getting hit like this. I feel bad. And we're the ones that are blamed for it. We're all blamed for this. It's our fault. It isn't your fault. It isn't a department head's fault. It's my fault. It's his fault. When we go out and about in the crowd, they're angry. Yeah. And I don't know what to say.
Well, if I may, woman who called you with the $81 or the $55 increase, I think what they might have done is they might have compared it to the fourth quarter, the last quarter bill. They might have gone and said, well, let me look at my last quarter bill. That bill was artificially low because it had been front-loaded last year, and then we decreased the taxes midway through the year by transferring some of that state aid money in. So what they have to really do to understand what their real increase is, they have to look at the first, second, third, and fourth quarter bills divided by 4. And some people don't do that. Some people don't, and surprisingly, some people that, should know better don't do that. The other woman that you spoke of, the one that has the $350 increase in there, chances are that's not a case of any tax increase. That's probably a case where her taxes went down. We have a number of people whose taxes have gone down the last couple of years because of when values come out. But again, the banks, the mortgage lenders, take the money in escrow and they base it typically off the fourth quarter bill or the prior 12 months. And then when their taxes go down, they hold that money and they wait until it's all the way through. I know myself, I've had to have my escrow account adjusted up. I've had my escrow account adjusted down and received a check. It takes a while for that to happen. But in that case, it sort of highlights what I've indicated in the past when we've met, that we have people whose taxes have gone down over the last several years, and that sounds like that might be one of those cases. But I understand the concern out there.
Councilor Noon and then Councilor Laurie.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you. Thank you for all the explanations, Mr. Managers. The practice or the quarter taxing policy, how long has it been implemented?
I believe this has been about 2 years now.
About 2 years?
Yeah. Again, to try to smooth out, because we do receive so many complaints from people who say, my taxes skyrocketed in January, and they've indicated they'd rather have them smoothed out.
The implementation, as you explained, that is you using your word, front-loaded the first and second quarters, and then adjusted on the third and fourth quarter. Is that correct?
The third and fourth quarter will be adjusted. Right. It's either you either front load or you back load. The preference is that you smooth out completely.
Right. The tax bill that was produced that all the citizens have received with those increase, was that based on the 2012 2.5 increase?
Yes.
Right. Going forward, you looking to maybe revisit that policy? Right?
We will be modifying that policy.
Yes. I heard my colleague indicated that overtax. Could you explain whether or not, based on the council vote on the budget last month, 0.4% and maybe 0.2, maybe not at all. Based on that, will they see an overtax in their bill? I mean, going forward, say, for example, you said the first quarter, the second quarter, they see the increase. That increase, as you explained, based on 2012 council vote on the budget, right? So 2013, 0.2%. So hopefully with the adjustment that you indicated, third and fourth quarter, correct, they will see an adjustment to that. So they're not going to be overtaxed, are they?
No, they will not. No. I understand Councilor Kennedy's point, though, but they will not be people will not be overtaxed, but I understand the point that right now they're paying a little bit more because of this.
Right, but the third and fourth quarter,
it goes down.
They go down, and that means to reflect on the 0.2% that the council vote on budget 2013.
Correct.
Thank you.
Councilor Laurie and then Councilor Broderick.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. When we look at redoing this, I'm looking at the sheet we were just given. 6 out of the 9 councilors, their taxes went down the first 2 quarters, which means they're going to go up in the last third and fourth. So I think we're going to be visiting this again in the fall. People who saw a decrease in their taxes from 2012 will see an increase in the second and third quarter to balance it off. I just figured out mine for the year. It comes up to about, I think, $12 for the year I'll be paying in taxes, $16. It's minimal. And I'll just take mine, for example. First 2 quarters, I go down $14, yet in the last 3 quarters, I'm going to go up from the third and fourth quarter in 2012, $20. So really, it's probably only an $8 increase for the year. But I think you'll be seeing that across the city. People whose taxes went down from the first 2 quarters last year are going to probably go up a little bit, like I did, and a few of the other councilors will, in 3 and 4. Yeah. So.
Councilor Broderick?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think it's clear that the policy that was in place doesn't necessarily work. It might have worked well to keep this, to prevent spikes in the past when we were going up 2.5%. Now that things have leveled off, Mr. Manager, and you've done a good job of reducing that, and the council made some cuts as well, I think that a new policy would be better suited for going forward. I think that's the key. The challenge here is that everybody's tax bill is a little bit different, and they go up for different reasons. And they, and if you read off of your fourth quarter, especially this recent one, where it went down because of what took place last fall, particularly putting $1 million towards the tax levy, it was, again, artificially low, so it does look like taxes went up much more from quarter to quarter. But it doesn't necessarily mean people are overtaxed. I think it's more that it's more front-loaded. And this system might have worked better when we were going to increase by 2.5%, but it's not well-suited for what's taking place now and hopefully to continue in the future, which is much less, if any, tax increase. So I look forward to seeing your new proposal or plan on how to handle these. But I think that it's important to try and maintain the somewhat levelness throughout the year. And I know that was the intent behind the change that was made a few years ago, but fortunately, things got much better for us. Unfortunately, it's going to take a little time for all the systems to catch up. Thank you.
Yeah.
Councilor Kennedy?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to the manager again. I understand that this is the bill that goes out is a preliminary tax bill for the first quarter and for the second quarter, and that the bills for the third and the fourth quarter are actual bills. Why is it why can we not reconcile the overpayment in the third quarter? Why does it have to be divided into 2 quarters? Why can't it just be the third quarter?
Wait till the third quarter?
No. Why can't it just be all reconciled in the third quarter rather than?
Oh, rather than the fourth quarter?
Yes.
It's not a lot, right. It's that the Department of Revenue issues those regulations, how the tax bills go out. Perhaps Ms. LeMay, if you want to speak to this? Or?
But people are paying over 4 quarters, so they're paying quarterly, all right? We've overcharged people, and we'll be overcharging them in the second quarter too. Why can't we reconcile that, correct that in the third quarter? Given that it's, if the taxes were going up, that'd be one thing. But where we've overcharged people, why can't that be reconciled in the third quarter by itself instead of the third and the fourth quarter? What's the answer to that?
Again, I would say it's the Department of Revenue, but we'll be happy to contact the Department of Revenue on that question.
Okay. And we get that at the next meeting too?
I can't promise you'll get that at the next meeting. It depends on the Department of Revenue issues a response to us on something like that. But we can certainly see what we can do on that.
Okay. I mean, it's just one question. It doesn't seem like it should be that hard for them. Yeah, okay.
It's easy to write I could do that tonight, but
Yeah.
Getting the response could take some time.
Any further discussion on the communications? Councilor Laurie?
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We received this in the packet this week, and by the way, I want to thank the manager for taking the time to answer those questions. It wasn't in the packet, but the previous. We received the public meeting notice for the Rourke Bridge. There's going to be a public meeting on the Rourke Bridge on Tuesday, July 17, 2012, from 6:30 to 8:30 at Lowell General Hospital at the Clark Auditorium at 295 Varnum Ave. I attended today. We had a meeting with some of the companies involved right now in the studies today. The town of Chelmsford was there. Members from NEMCOG were there. From the city, Lisa DeMayo, the city engineer, Eric Eby, the traffic engineer. I know Mr. Bakey, I saw him. And Jerry Frechette. The city has two representatives on this committee right now, and one luckily is Jerry Frechette, who's been on the planning department for years, an activist out of Pawtuckaville who's very involved. And myself, I'm the representative to NEMCOG. And we saw the presentation that will go to the public on Tuesday, on July 17th, and it's well worth attending. If anyone has any questions on traffic, or they have anything to do with the Rourke Bridge, I would strongly ask people to attend. As you would expect, Jerry and myself had most of the questions at the end, mostly on traffic design, where the bridge will go, other alternative sites. I know I questioned quite a bit on recreation facilities. When they built this bridge 30 years ago, the river was heavily polluted. Today it's clean. People are using it for boating, fishing, swimming. And I know soon I get home, Tom Golden is working with the Department of Conservation and Recreation. They're increasing what they're doing here in the city. So recreation is going to play a part. So whether it's the construction of the bridge, traffic flow, recreation, conservation, I would really recommend anyone who can to go to this meeting on July 17th. Thank you.
Thank you, Council. Councilman Donza.
I was happy to get the communication that the City Hall clock has been repaired so that people going through the city will now see the correct time on City Hall, so I do appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Council. Councilor Mercia.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We received a communication from Powers and Sullivan regarding the audit, and we heard a lot of talk about the audit that's I don't know if it's taken place or what, but it says, we will perform an investigation regarding potential irregularities or errors in accounting transactions related to cash collections of the kiosk and the parking garage operations. The nature of our procedures will be limited. Therefore, fraud may exist that will not be identified. So what actually are they auditing? We're going to pay $25,000. Now, I felt that Powers and Sullivan was going to conduct an audit anyway, so I'm wondering why we're paying $25,000 for this is now called a forensic audit. I don't understand why. I thought Powers and Sullivan was coming in to do this audit, and they're under contract, so I thought this was the department they were going to audit anyway, so what's the deal with that, Mr. Manager?
Well, this isn't a communication from me, but I do have a copy of it. My reading of this, and I was, as you know, I wasn't at the last meeting, but my reading of this is that the council sought a different type of audit than an additional amount of work beyond what the independent auditor is doing. And so the auditor, Ms. Wright, sought a proposal for that for the $25,000. This is they are doing an audit. They are focusing their efforts over in the parking operation as had been planned a few months ago. But this would be on top of that to do a much more in-depth review of the whole operation. So this is something that if the council wants, this is my understanding. I mean, the councilors were here, might want to speak to this if I misunderstand, but my understanding is that this would be beyond normal scope of the independent audit that they do. It would be additional work.
Well, at first I thought that it would make no sense to spend almost as much as the money that was allegedly stolen anyways, to find out that it's probably 40,000 instead of 38,000, I don't know, but now it seems like that's not what they're looking at. So are we hiring this auditor to do the work of trying to see that this doesn't happen again, and what's the procedure that took place? I'm rather confused with this audit, because if we're spending $25,000 to try to figure out how much was taken when it's almost as much as was stolen, it didn't make sense. Or are we hiring this auditing firm to do an overview so this does not happen again when people are in place to be doing that? So I don't know what this audit is going to be about.
Well, again, Council, and I agree with your, your comments that regarding utilizing this, spending this kind of money to identify what we already, actually, we've already been paid back.
Right.
So, but I think if you go to this third sentence here, this audit obviously is on a completely different level in that it may in fact be used in connection with litigation. Again, I don't know what comments were made at the last meeting regarding this, but this is a completely different type of audit than what the auditors are currently doing now. And we will get their feedback on our policies and procedures as a result of the work that they're doing now.
And you know what? It also makes me feel that where it is not the city's fault that now we have to do an audit like this, I think not only should they pay us back for the money that was taken, they should pay us back for this $25,000 audit to do something. The city taxpayers are paying for something that is no fault of ours, but caused from someone that did this.
Any work along those lines, I agree with you that they should pay, but this is different than that as well. This is, again, this would be any type of work involved in any litigation. Perhaps if anyone else wants to weigh in on this, I'm only going on what I've seen here and what I've, just communicated with staff on. But no, this contract has not been executed. This work is not taking place. This is put to the council. If you want to do this work, I think the auditor recommends that you request of me that we appropriate money.
Well,
but
can I tell you, Mr. Manager, I'm not supporting $25,000 for an audit that had nothing to do with any wrongdoing on our part. And if we're going to do it and bill them for it, central parking, I'd say yes, yes. But I'm thinking an audit to me, is it an audit to know what procedure should be in place that this won't happen again? Because I think we have people in place that should be doing this automatically.
Absolutely.
Not to hire an auditing firm to do the overview. So I don't know where we're going with this, and I'm kind of, I'll only support it if we're not going to ultimately pay for it, because I don't think we should.
I agree with you.
Councilor Kennedy and then Councilor Mendoza.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, through you to the city manager, I had several questions for the city auditor, and I understand that she's on vacation, won't be here, and so those questions will have to wait for the next meeting. But in the correspondence that this city council has received from the city auditor, I have been left, I'm confused, actually, with what is actually going on in terms of the audits for central parking. It was my understanding, and maybe you can shed some light on this, maybe you can't, but I suspect that you probably, if any of this is going on, that you probably know about it. My understanding was that in the immediate aftermath of the discoveries at central parking, that what happened was the city auditor went over to do her own internal audit of the central parking department. And that then Powers and Sullivan were going in, and they were going to do one. And I was also told that Central Parking was doing their own audit. That's 3 audits. Now, I don't have the results of any of those audits, and my assumption was that the Powers and Sullivan and Sullivan audit was part of the contract that the city auditor had entered into, and that the original plan and that the original contract was that that Powers and Sullivan would do a forensic or a comprehensive audit in the fall as part of the general audit that's done for the whole city. And that because of the problems at Central Parking, that audit had been moved up to take place now. Now, recently, we just got a communication that's, and this is what Councilor Mercier is referring to, saying that Powers and Sullivan are going to charge at least $25,000 for that audit. And so I don't know, and maybe somebody can tell me, have any audits been done? Are any audits being done? And who's paying for what audits? And did we get the $37,000 back? Is there extra money that's missing? Or has the police investigation been concluded? I mean, where does that stand, the whole thing?
A lot of questions.
Yes.
The police investigation is, I'll say that that's still ongoing with regards to any prosecution of the individual who stole the money. The auditor, my understanding is the auditor has been there assembling materials, doing some preliminary pre-audit work, and she brought in Powers and Sullivan earlier, not to do necessarily a forensic audit, which is what's being described here, but more of sort of, to use a term that we've already used today, front-loading the work of the auditor in their annual audit to get them in there now to sort of check on where things are, check transactions, and provide us with their work earlier, particularly in that area, than they would otherwise in their audit. They agreed to come in and help us with that. And then Central Parking has their own loss control team in doing an audit, and they are working with us as well. So all of this is ongoing, and we anticipate that, within the next 30 days, that will be complete.
That it will all be completed?
I would hope, yes.
Okay. And as far as who's paying for what, you don't?
Central Parking is paying for theirs.
Yep.
And they're not, that's not being billed off to us. We're paying for our audit because we pay for our audit every year. That's an annual appropriation that we do. That's it.
Okay. So let's stick with the one that we're paying for, that we have done every year, that we outsource to Powers and Sullivan.
That we contract to Powers and Sullivan, yes.
Right. Why did we get a memo from, and maybe you don't know the answer to this, but why did we get a memo from the city auditor saying it was going to cost an additional $25,000? That's what Councilor Mercier is referring to.
I understand, and I have that right in front of me. And my understanding is here that it says, please find the quote I've obtained from Powers and Sullivan to do the complete forensic audit. The audit firm has been at the parking department performing as many of the tests as they possibly can under their current contract. This audit obviously is on a completely different level in that it may, in fact, be used in connection with litigation. If the council would like to vote on either approving this contract or to have me obtain more quotes, please let me know, and I will immediately do so upon returning. The manager will have to send you an appropriation from the parking enterprise for you to vote to fund this audit. That's, again, if the council was seeking, again, and I'm basing this on just what I've been told, that my understanding is that the discussion with the council and the auditor at the last meeting, there were questions raised that maybe a more comprehensive audit, a forensic audit, should be conducted. And she was responding to that.
Right, but she responded in part by saying that there was one of the companies had given a proposal saying that the cost for that was going to be in excess of $100,000.
I thought that was the cash audit that was talked about last November.
For all
Cash, right.
all of the enterprise accounts.
All of the cash-based departments, I
Okay.
believe is that quote. That was back in November.
Let me ask you, what is your position on the situation at Central Parking and the need for an audit there? And what is your position on that?
At this point, I would say, let's see what Powers and Sullivan comes back with the work that they're doing, and then, and see what Central Parking provides us, and then we'll make a decision on whether additional work is needed.
Right. And so you're saying based on Powers and Sullivan under the current contract?
Exactly.
Not the additional?
Not the additional.
Okay.
No.
I would concur with that as long as it's done within 30 days. I mean, I don't want for this to drag out for months and months. There's no reason for that.
No.
But, and I guess the rest of my questions, of which there's several, we'll have to wait till the auditor comes back.
Yeah, and again, my hope is this will all be wrapped up in 30 days, not the entire city audit, but this portion of the
Right.
city audit, and it may not be totally complete, but we'll have better information, better answers in 30 days. That then will direct us to any next steps.
Okay.
I think that this is one of those situations that, I guess I'll hold for now, and we'll talk about it as time goes on.
You can talk about it now if you want.
No, that's all right.
Okay.
Thanks.
Councilor Mendoza and then Councilor Broderick.
My concern about doing more audits is we haven't got the results of the ones that are underway, which are not costing us any more money. They've already been budgeted, they were agreed to what was going to be done. And then there's also the one being done by Central Parking on their operations that they need to provide to us as well. So I just don't see that it would be sound judgment to spend another $25,000 plus, because it's a minimum of $25,000, unless there's an inkling that there's more than that missing, and there isn't so far. I mean, it's not even to recover the $37,000 because we already have recovered that. That's the same rationale I used with the $100,000 proposal back in November. Unless there's some suspicion that we're missing at least that much, spending the money means we're wasting it. We'd be spending more than we could possibly recover, in addition to anything that might be lost. And so I don't see the rationale in us spending the money without a reasonable expectation that we'll recover the vast majority of that money in some way. So I would have to be convinced that that was the case before I could support spending additional money on additional audits. Let's just see what happens with what's being done. And if there's suspicion that more could be recovered, let me know what that suspicion is from those results.
Correct.
And then would that justify spending additional money? Then I consider it. Until then, there's no way I'm going to consider spending more money to do what the city can do with the paperwork that exists, that it already has in hand right now. It can determine what money was missing. And as far as potentially other funds that might be missing, I don't think that an outside auditor could find that any more easily than our internal personnel could. So I'd like to go that route first. Let's use what we've already paid for before we pay for something else.
I agree completely.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Broderick and then Councilor Laurie.
Thank you. I was going to say two things. The first, Councilman Mendoza just said that I think it's premature. I don't think we want to vote on this and spend the money till at least we find out what we've already paid for and what we're going to get. It wouldn't make sense. But secondly, I don't see this as a recommendation by the auditor. Unfortunately, she's not here. But I think this was as much for information purposes because there were a lot of questions on why wasn't this done before and how much would it cost and so on and so forth. So I saw this more as informational and at the end saying that if you want to go ahead and do it, take the vote and ask the manager to appropriate the money. I don't see this as a recommendation to go ahead from her. But I think that at a minimum, we should wait until we get whatever results we're going to get internally, but also from Powers and Sullivan, to find out if it makes sense. At this point now, it doesn't make sense to just keep spending money and gathering information that may not be necessary. So that's what I had to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Lowry?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I concur with probably 3 audit teams down there right now. I don't know if I love to be a fly on the wall down there watching all these auditors fight over a piece of paper. But what's troubling somewhat is, since the contract was signed, we could have had an auditor in there at our cost once a year, and we never did. So we're probably catching up now. In the future, would that be something, an expense the city will be looking at?
Councilor, I think you're referring to the parking, central parking contract.
Right.
There's language in there that says that that's a standard central parking contract that, you know, met our legal requirements, and we all signed off on that after it went out to bid. The notion of having that in and of itself would have been an extra audit.
Absolutely.
Beyond the city's annual audit.
But we didn't
So
have 3
we
auditors
would have,
down
and we
there.
would have paid for it. So
Right.
in that case, it would have been essentially 2 audits: the city's audit, and now a central parking derived audit. Obviously, that language was there in the event that whoever was administering that contract saw a need to do that. It wasn't done. I don't know if I would have had it done.
Right.
Because we have our own independent outside auditor that comes in on an annual basis and reviews things. So I don't see that necessarily happening in the future, but I think we'll wait and see, again, what comes out of these audits and then figure out from there where to.
Well, I concur with the idea that why spend $25,000 if there's no proof of anything? As Councilman Dunst was saying, you're going to spend this money to find absolutely minimal. When does the contract run out?
The central parking contract, I believe, runs out in October.
This October?
Right.
Now, if they don't get the new contract, I'm sure it'll be another audit, because the company coming in, if another company takes over the bid, will want an audit done before they start.
I'm not sure that they necessarily would.
If I was a company handling probably $6, $7, $8 million in cash, I don't think I'd take a contract without doing an audit,
Yeah.
but that's me.
Yeah.
So I'm just looking down the line that, again, we
And
could be-
if that's the case, anything on that would be something. If a company wants to do that before they come in, that would be their responsibility.
they would
and
pay
they'd
for
themselves.
that. That was going to be my next question. Thank you.
Thank you. Any, Councilor Kennedy?
I guess the frustration is this, is that there's 3 auditing teams down there, but there's no information coming back. So maybe there's no auditing teams down there is my concern, or maybe nobody's really gonna come. I'm looking for some information on what's the situation there, and that's taken, it seems, a long time. I mean, another 30 days, and that's fine, I'll wait the 30 days. But it's been about a month already, and I know that the city auditor has been in and out of there. I don't know how long Powers and Sullivan have been in there, but it's got to be a couple of weeks. I mean, we're not talking about the whole city. We're talking about one department. That's it. It's fine that we rely on the city audit, but the city audit didn't show up the missing money in central parking. There's $8 million go through that department annually. The audit that we have, it didn't show up that money. That money didn't show up as missing.
It happened, in large part, it happened in fiscal year 12.
I'm not sure that
I think
that's
some of it,
true.
I think some of it ripples back to 11, but I think most of it was in 12.
I don't think that's true either, Mr. Manager. I mean, I don't want to go too far into that, but I think it goes back beyond that, and I think you think that too. So it isn't like it's just 1 year. That isn't the case. All I'm saying is, for all the audits that are being done, I'd just like to get some information on what the situation is, and it's a little bit frustrating at this point. And so 30 days is fine, but hopefully we'll get something from.
Yeah, and hopefully it will be sooner.
I'm sorry?
Hopefully it'll be sooner rather than
Yes.
that. Right.
Councilor Ellerly?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, I think the audit should be done. And I don't disagree that I'm confused with the communications on what has taken place with this entire issue. It seems every time there's a problem, we have to go outside and get another accounting firm, we have to get another legal counsel, when we have people here that are apparently not doing their job. This never should have gotten to this level. You know, I keep seeing references, one in your communication, Mr. Manager, a while back, and then another one from the auditor, in quotations, if it wasn't for an anonymous or concerned citizen. You know, I took that as, you know, putting that in quotations as trivializing the individual that came forward. And I take exception to it, because had it not been for that individual that came forward, we would have known about this. So we should be having an audit. We should have another firm. I don't think we should be looking at Powers and Sullivan. Council Kennedy's right, they missed it. They missed it the first time around. They didn't see it. $38,000 internal procedures. You know, the law department did their job. They got the language in to have an audit done. As far as I know, every other enterprise fund has an audit conducted. I know we used to get them from the arena, the ballpark. I believe we get them from the auditorium. And this should be done. $6-7 million, just to make sure everything is sound. And when red flags, we see multiple deposits, those are red flags, and I stand by it. And at that point, it should have triggered an audit. Do we need a forensic audit? I don't know. How do we know that money is not missing, I guess is my point. And why don't we pursue an audit and have Central Parking pay for it? Let's take it out of their incentive award. Why that was continued is beyond me. I think that we should pursue that and pull that back. We award an incentive on a monthly basis to a company that stole money from the city of Lowell. And I don't know why we're not pursuing that in a legal manner. It's not owed to them. It shouldn't be part of it. And that should be recouped not only in addition to that $37,000. I mean, it's $33,000 in that contract. I don't even know what it's based on. It's a performance contract. What are they performing? How do they achieve a certain performance? First and foremost. And secondly, there's a termination clause in that contract. There's a termination clause for a reason. And I don't know what other grounds that we need not to terminate this company, but to me, this would be a no-brainer, and they should be gone by now. So that's what I think that we should do. And I'm not sure why you haven't done that at this point, Mr. Manager. Maybe you have an explanation for it. But, and I'll stop there. Why haven't we terminated this company, Mr. Manager?
I haven't deemed it to be in the city's best interests.
We have a company that knew that money was being stolen, but we don't deem that significant enough. And they knew about it. We don't deem that significant enough to terminate that contract? What do you base that on?
At this point, Councilor, I'm not going to go down this road with, for really in the city's best interests, best legal interests. It's easy to make statements. It's easy to make claims. You know, I think I try to deal with these issues a bit more.
Wait, the parking manager didn't do his job, so you fired him.
Correct.
Central Parking didn't do their job, so fire them. Get rid of them.
When that's determined to be the case, if it's determined to be the case.
Okay. Well, back on the issue of the audit. You know, there's a trend. There's a trend in the accounting, the way accounting is being done, the way it's being handled. First, we had a major problem in the treasurer's office. Then it was the clerk's office. Then it was the parking department. We received a memo saying if we did these two in November, when I asked what the cost would be, first and foremost, I think that we should follow up on the auditor's suggestion or highlighting the fact, do we want her to get more quotes? Yeah, I think that we should. We spent $55,000 to straighten out or at least start a new cash book in the treasurer's office with Melanson and Heath. I mean, why aren't we looking at anyone else other than Powers and Sullivan and Melanson and Heath? I bet you there's a ton of firms out there. We have some local firms. I bet you that we can get better prices on it. So we just stick with one firm because they're in here, and I don't understand that. So why we don't go out and get, you search for better prices, you get better quotes, as far as I know.
Well, I think
So,
she's
and I'll
offered
bring that to the auditor. I understand you said before that's not your jurisdiction, but I do think that we pursue it. I think that if it's a forensic audit or we have another set of eyes, another independent set, not Powers and Sullivan, not Melanson and Heath, someone that'll come in, want to get to the bottom of it. If it's $38,000, it could be $138,000. We don't know. And if we don't know, then we should do what is in the best interest and pursue that. Thank you.
Councilor Laurie.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, listening to the conversation, one of the problems, and I wasn't here with the earlier problems, it involves cash. And it always seems to involve somehow in-house employees or whatever. The problem with hiring auditors all the time is that if it's an in-house employee and we sit here and debate the need for an auditor to come in, they can either adjust the books or return some money so we won't notice it. And I was just wondering, is there a better way when we're dealing with cash, when we're dealing with in-house employees, that maybe we don't debate the fact that we need an auditor, but just bring people in, or our own people in, as I think Councilor Elliott's saying, that we don't even discuss it. They just do a periodic check. Because, when you're dealing with cash, people are going to take their job, and if they want to steal, they're going to steal. They're going to stay up all night and think all day how to steal the money and not get caught. And the only way you can do that is to just walk in and do audits. And with us debating it, it really isn't going to do much good down the line. So maybe that's something we could do. Go ahead.
I'm going to say, Council, I think that is done, and when we see evidence that something is askew, we go in and we check, and those things do happen. Right. And there's times in every organization that people find ways around the system, or that before that comes up, people do come forward and provide us with information. And that's not, although it's put in parentheses or quotations, that's not meant in any derogatory term. It's, I don't recall ever doing that, but if I've done it, it's just to highlight the fact that there's people out there that are coming forward and helping us, and we appreciate their coming. That's crucial to us, because people, if you look at every organization, I remember reading a while back that there was, one of the local banks had someone who was stealing money. It took, as I recall, months for them to determine what it was, and finally someone else came forward and said, this is what's going on. Their auditors missed it. Their people had missed it. These are major banks in our community, and but fortunately, there are honest people out there that come forward and report that. Yeah. So you depend on that. So,
and when you're dealing with cash, there's not much you can do. People, but it's how do you develop a system to do the best you can to at least detect it. So, right. Okay.
Councilor Elliott.
Thank you. I'd like to make a motion that these reports that we received from the city auditor be referred to the Audit Oversight Subcommittee, 1, 2, 3, even the one back to 2011.
Motion by Councilor Elliott, seconded by Councilor Broderick. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? So voted.
Mr. Mayor, I have a couple of other motions as well. This incentive fee really, it really gets me, because we're paying a company that knew they were stealing money. So I like to make a motion that we rescind any incentive awards that have been given to Central Parking and recuperate those awards. I think it's $33,000 a year or $2,700 a month.
Could you repeat the motion, please?
The motion was that we rescind the incentive fees paid to Central Parking for the last year and recuperate any fees that have been paid, 'cause I believe we pay them on a monthly basis.
Okay, motion by Councilor Elliott, seconded by Councilor Kenny. Councilor Broderick.
Thank you. I'll support a motion to get a report on it and, or to get a report on the whole, I think, situation, or an update. But I have a question through you, Mr. Mayor, maybe to the city solicitor, as to whether we as a governing body have the authority or jurisdiction to rescind any pieces or clauses in a contract. To me, that would sound like it's an administrative issue, and I don't know as if we can take that vote. But I'd like that clarified before we go forward.
Well, the contracts themselves are under the jurisdiction of the manager. He approves them. He is the final signatory and really statutorily the signatory that matters, that binds the city. That being said, the council certainly could ask that any of those things be looked at. In this particular case, it's certainly something to look at. Part of the issue here, I think, is that Central Parking is in the midst of working with the city to complete its own investigation and provide us with information that it discovers in the course of its audits, and the investigation into exactly what happened and who was at fault has not yet been fully determined. So I'm not sure if at this point that this kind of a motion would really be appropriate until we really know exactly who knew what and when did they know it, particularly at the end of Central Parking. If it was a situation similar to ours, where at a certain level things were known, but it didn't go beyond that, then that may raise different issues that need to be analyzed. And this is certainly something that, as we go forward, we could meet in executive session to protect any rights that the city has, as we're engaging in televised proceedings, and if we're going to be having future litigation potentially with Central Parking, depending upon what is discovered as the results of these investigations, that's something that would be wise to do. So, but if I didn't answer the question completely, even though the manager has the right to enter into the contract, certainly the council has the right to weigh in if they feel that something should be looked at or investigated into, and that would be, if that were the extent of this, might not be, if that were the extent of this, it would be perfectly permissible. If it's to become more active in terms of the actual entering into contracts or rescinding them, then that becomes more problematic because it's clearly in the domain of a more administrative function.
So
would it be more appropriate then to the maker of the motion to word it, motion to review the incentive fee structure for the?
Yeah, I don't have any objection to that, Mr. Mayor. I don't want to trepidate on, any, or jeopardize the city's position, but, it's, and I see an incentive fee being paid on a monthly basis. I'm going to hope, or I will ask, that is this practice stopped? Because it is, we were told before, it was on a monthly basis. And whose decision is to stop it? The manager? Has it been stopped, Mr. Manager? Have we paid them since this whole debacle?
They were paid their final payment back in June. They haven't received any July payments yet.
Did that include the incentive award?
I don't believe so. I'll have to check on that.
Okay. That's certainly my concern is to stop, and so that's fine.
So motion by Councilor Elliott to review the incentive fees under the current contract, seconded by Councilor Kennedy. Would you like a roll call on that? All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed? So voted. Anything further under communications? Councilor Kennedy.
I just have one quick item. It's not, it wasn't in the packet either, but on June 30th, Saturday, the final day of the Could we get a report on why they were doing that and how much that all cost? I know that I spoke with Mr. Marchand about it, and he informed me that it was for safety reasons for the street, but I was up there, and it seems like it was done in certain areas, and then there were other parts, Malden Street, it seems like the trees are still overgrown, so that it wasn't done there. So anyways, if we could just get a report on why that needed to be done on a Saturday on the final day of the fiscal year, for a crew that involved, I don't know, half a dozen people and a few trucks at time and a half, for the next meeting, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Any further discussion on the communications? Motion to accept as a communication by Councilor Mendonça, second by Councilor Mercia. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed, so voted. Being after 7 o'clock, we'll move to the utility public hearing portion of the agenda. From National Grid, we have a request to install a new pole at 135 4th Avenue. At this point, we'd open it up for a public hearing. Wishing to speak in favor? If you just state your name and...
Sharon DuPont, 128 4th Ave. I own 128 4th Ave, 130 4th Ave, and 134 4th Ave. And the new pole is going across the street, and we have some questions on it, but I will let her introduce herself too.
Hi, Denise O'Neill, 140 4th Avenue. And one of the poles is right in front of my house.
Okay.
Now, when we got the letter in the mail saying that you were going to have a meeting, it said that they were going to construct a manhole, and I went to the engineering department today, and they said no, they were just going to take down the existing pole and put in a new pole across the street at 135. I asked them for the information on it, and upon reading this, it says that they want to set a new pole at 135 4th Ave to better support the service line to pole 11, which is directly in front of her
Which is the
house.
pole in front of my house, right.
Now, we have a question. We have 3 huge transformers right in front of her house, which is a safety hazard because a couple of houses away, one of the transformers broke during the last storm, and the whole wire and everything was all in the yard, and it was on fire.
And National Grid had to say, they had a guy out there, and we all had no power, oops, sorry. We all had no power, and they had to have somebody stay 24 hours to watch the wires.
That was like 4 days.
Yeah.
So we're afraid of the safety for her house, and we would like to know if National Grid can move the 3 transformers across the street to the new pole.
I don't actually see a representative from National Grid here. So it may make sense to postpone this vote until a later time, and until your questions can be asked, and maybe after at some point you can talk with Henry Marchand about the list of items that you have.
Okay. The other thing too is National Grid, they had several years ago, they cut a hole in my sidewalk. And they said then that they were replacing my pole. And I still have the hole in my sidewalk, and my pole still slants. And, you know, with the storms and everything, you really see it swaying and stuff. Now, several years ago, they felt they needed to replace that pole. Hasn't been replaced. Now they want to construct another pole across the street. You know, my concern is what's going to happen with the pole that I have. They told her that that pole was being replaced, but that's not what this says. This says that they're just adding another pole. Is my pole going to get another transformer? You know, that's my, you know, I just want to know what's happening because that pole makes me nervous as it is. It should have been replaced several years ago when they cut the hole.
So, like I say, Mr. Marchand will be able to take your concerns and relay them to National Grid. And in the meantime, I think it would probably be best after we go through the public hearing to postpone that vote until a later date.
Okay.
Okay?
All right, good, because we have other questions on them. All right, thank you very much, sir.
Okay, thanks
Thank
very
you.
much. So anyone else wishing to speak in favor? In favor? Seeing none, that portion of the public hearing is closed. Anyone wishing to speak in opposition? in opposition? Seeing none, that portion of the public hearing is closed. Motion on the floor, then to delay by Councilor Kennedy, second by Councilor Laurie. Councilor Martin?
I support the motion to delay, but I'd ask for a report and recommendation from the
Sure.
city manager's office about this, too.
Thank you. All those in favor of the motion? On the motion, Councilor Evans?
Just on the motion real quick. So, Mr. Henry, are you going to get in touch with these two homeowners and figure out exactly what needs to be done or what they want to have done for the next meeting? That'll be part of the report? Okay, thank you.
Thank you. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed? So voted. Returning to the city manager's portion of the agenda, we have
Mr.
communication. Excuse me.
Sorry, but just, we have somebody here who has filed a petition. I don't know if he's here or not, Mr. Daly, but
Yes. Yep.
I'd
Motion to
suggest that we
suspend.
take that out of order, if we
Sure.
could.
Motion by Councilor Martin to suspend the rules, seconded by Councilor Mercia. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed? So voted. Under general petitions, we have Mr. William Daly of Lowell to request to address the city council about a public health problem. Mr. Daly?
Good evening. My name is Bill Daly. I live in Floyd Street in Lowell. I want to congratulate you, Mr. Mayor, on your nuptials. Sláinte. I'm here to request an ordinance or an amendment to the animal ordinance in the city of Lowell. I'm not a happy camper, really disappointed in the response I've received from the city council. I've talked to a few personally, emailed them, and the response is, the silence is deafening. I mean, it's a shame when you can't call somebody, you just ask to put something on the agenda, which I feel really strongly about. And my concern is stray cats and feral cats in the city of Lowell. It's a very serious health problem, which apparently no one in the city cares about. Most people don't realize cats pass on feline leukemia to people, to humans. Known fact. The bite of a cat with the bacteria in its mouth is more severe than a dog's bite. And mostly, or I should say, cats are responsible for the extinction of a lot of species of wildlife because of their predatory ways. If people have bird baths in their backyard or bird feeders, these cats just kill to kill. It's their way. And I, for one, am so tired of cats tearing up the flower beds, your mulch. I've lost patio furniture because they jump up on it and urinate on it. They've gone under my grill, the cover, urinate in there. They've torn up shrubs, bushes. I've had to have my car detailed because the cats went under, chased a skunk under my car and they fought in there and they sprayed us all over there. I mean, it's disgusting. And I also feel like, along with probably the rest of the city, if you're a dog owner, you have to have your dog licensed. You have to have your dog inoculated for rabies. You have to, when you have your dog out, he has to be on a leash. And you have to pick up after your dog. Cat owners don't have to do any of this. There's nothing in the city ordinances requiring them to do that. They can have as many cats as they want in their household. And there's nothing the city can do about it. You talk to the animal control, they said there's nothing they can do, nobody cares. He says, so their hands are tied. And I think the city should seriously consider this, for public health reasons. No one seems to care. But I, for one, feel very strongly about this. I want to thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Daly. Motion to accept the communication? Councilor Martin?
Yeah, I'd make a motion to refer this to the city manager. I'd be curious to see if, what other communities do. Maybe we can look at some other places for models of how other places have dealt with similar problems.
Motion by Councilor Martin, seconded by Councilor Laurie.
Oh, yeah.
Councilor Laurie on the motion.
I talked to Mr. Daly earlier, and, you know, I've talked to the city clerk. I think there's only one town or community in Massachusetts that even registers cats or leashes cats. I don't know if they've had any success. I've talked to the health department. As far as feline leukemia, you don't transmit it to humans. It can be transmitted to other cats, but as far as humans are concerned, I've talked to the health department. They're more concerned about rabies with cats. I talked to Mr. Daly and I was sympathetic, but what do you do? If people let their cats out and our animal control officer goes out, grabs the cat, bring it to the pound, and in 30 days, exterminates the cat, the city's going to be sued. They can be sued for that. So, there's a lot more issues to this, and not that I oppose it, but I did do some research on it, and when I talked to Mr. Daly, it's not going to be an easy thing to do. And as far as the health, I don't know what the health is, the issue. Everyone I've talked to, feline leukemia cannot be given to a human being. That's what I've been told. So the bigger risk is rabies, if they're in a fight with a raccoon or so on and so forth. And that is a public issue there. But as far as, I don't know how many people in this city own cats, but now you're going to ask them to come down and get a license. It's what's a fee, the city clerk for a dog? $10. So now these people are going to have to start coughing up money for fees, So, I support Councilor Martin's motion to have the manager look at it and come back with a report. But I've looked into it, and in the past for Mr. Daly, it's not going to be easy, so.
All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Opposed? So voted. Returning to number 4 on the agenda, communication from the city manager to request approval of out-of-state travel for the Lowell Police Department. Councilor Mercier.
Mr. Mayor, I know that it says on the agenda that there's one request, but I have 2 in my packet, if everybody does. So if there is, in fact, 2, I would move that we put them both together, and I support the out-of-state travel.
Motion by Councilor Mercier to take the 2 for approval, and seconded by Councilor Broderick. Roll call, please.
Mayor Murphy.
Yes.
Councilor Nguyen.
Yes.
Councilor Broderick.
Yes.
Councilor Elliott.
Yes.
Councilor Kennedy.
Yes.
Councilor Laurie.
Yes.
Councilor Martin.
Yes.
Councilor Madonza.
Yes.
Councilor Mercier.
Yes.
9 yeas.
Next on the agenda is a vote to declare surplus 14 and 16 3rd Street. Motion to waive the full reading by Councilor Elliott, seconded by Councilor Laurie. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? So voted. Reading by title and city council vote. Declaring surplus property located at 14 and 16 3rd Street, Lowell, Massachusetts, and authorizing the city manager to seek proposals under the provisions of Mass General Laws, Chapter 30B, for the disposition of said parcels, namely 14 and 16 3rd Street, Lowell. What's the wish of the council?
Move approval.
Move for approval by Councilor Mercier, seconded by Councilor Noon. Councilor Kennedy.
Mr. Mayor, through you to Mr. Bakey, these 2 properties, these are empty, and how is the $85,000 determined? Was there an appraisal done or something?
Yeah, good evening, councilors. Consistent with the requirements of Mass General Law, Chapter 30B,
an independent appraisal was conducted of these properties that established the value at $85,000. And again, consistent with 30B, that therefore has to be the minimum bid price that we ask for.
Okay. And so what would happen? There'd be an RFP now?
Yeah, the process would be, again, consistent with our local requirements. We would notify all of the abutters of the availability of the property and issue an RFP that interested parties would have to respond to with their proposals. The RFP would identify a number of criteria in addition to price that are considered in evaluating the proposals. The administration would then either, if we have an advantageous proposal that comes out of the RFP process, we would bring that most advantageous proposal back to the City Council for the City Council to either authorize an actual purchase and sale agreement or reject if that was the council's desire.
Okay. And when, that's a pretty busy business district, and so in preparing to declare it surplus, did your department look at the possibility of parking, municipal parking there?
Well, the lots themselves are actually paved today, and cars do park in them, but not primarily serving the businesses. There is a fully operational municipal parking lot that's actually closer to the business district on 3rd Street than these lots that actually works quite well for the businesses. There is some overnight parking that occurs in those lots, but our staff did go out and take a look at it in the evenings as well and discovered that there is essentially as much parking on street and available parking in that municipal lot as there would be vehicles displaced if these lots were sold. That said, it is, I think as I indicated in the cover memo, there is some, I'm sure there are folks who enjoy parking for free on the city's property on this lot and have for some time, despite a number of attempts in the past by the city to reach out to the landlords of surrounding properties to see if anyone was interested in actually leasing parking and not receiving any response to that. There may indeed be people who are, I guess, enjoying free parking at the moment at the city's expense, who may be disappointed if those lots are sold.
Okay, thanks.
Any further discussion on the vote? Roll call, please.
Mayor Murphy.
Yes.
Counsel Nguyen.
Yes.
Counsel Broderick.
Yes.
Counsel Elliott.
Yes.
Counsel Kennedy.
Yes.
Counsel Laurie.
Yes.
Counsel Martin.
Yes.
Counsel Mendoza.
Yes.
Counsel Mercia.
Yes.
9 yeas.
Next item is an ordinance amend the zoning to allow family daycare in downtown. Reading by title, in City Council vote. An ordinance amending the Code of Ordinances of the City of Lowell, Massachusetts with respect to Chapter 290 thereof entitled Lowell Zoning Ordinance by amending various sections relating to the DMU zoning district to allow family daycare as an accessory use. I would entertain a motion to refer to a public hearing for August 14th by Councilor Mercia, seconded by Councilman Donza. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed? So voted. Next, we have a vote to transfer $90,000 to cover the Medicare tax due. Vote in the City Council, order to cover Medicare tax that became due with the processing of year-end payrolls ordered by the City Council of the City of Lowell as follows: that the amount of $90,000 be transferred from contingency account number 0123-7056-561700 as more fully described in attachment A to Medicare tax account number 09139-714-572000 as more fully described in attachment A. Order recommended and introduced by Bernard F. Lynch, City Manager. Second reading by title and City Council vote. Order to cover Medicare tax that became due with the processing of year-end payrolls. What's the wish of the council? Move for approval by Councilor Laurie, second by Councilor Broderick. Any discussion? Councilor Laurie.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I saw the report we received from the city. This is to cover Medicare, and a lot of it has to do with the teachers taking the time off in the summer, who gets checks throughout the summer. I don't understand. They make X amount of dollars a year, whether they work 12, well, they work so many months, but whether they get checks 12 months out of the year or 8 months, they still have the same salary.
They're actually paid September to September.
Right.
So if they elect to get paid, and the number varies each year. So, if 40% get paid through the summer one year and 30% the next year, it shifts the tax from one year to another. It's so hard to predict that. You don't know what's going to happen
But
year
they
to
make
year.
the same amount of money.
They do, but it actually shifts the liability from one year to another. So you have these swings where you have excess one year and you run a deficiency in another year, depending on how things change. The other aspect to this is there are some older employees who don't have Medicare tax deducted, and as they retire and they're backfilled by new employees who all have that number increases tremendously each year. I don't know if you've noticed that the rate of increase in that line item actually far exceeds the rate of increase in the payroll. And that's because of these older employees that are cycled out, newer employees are cycled in.
So there's still employees who don't pay Medicare if they've been here long enough?
No, they're getting fewer, yeah.
That's very hard to understand. We did the same thing in the federal government in 1983, but everyone had to pay into Medicare. So even though I started prior to 1980, I'll be Medicare eligible. We were forced into it. I'm surprised the state never did the same.
Being forced into Medicare benefits and being eligible to have this withholding are two different criteria. And some of the older employees that we hire are not necessarily full-time staffers, but they might be part-time, temporary employees that are coming in.
That would explain it, okay. Thank you.
Councilor Elliott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Moses, why is it so difficult to determine who is getting paid on what type of structure, what their payment plan is? Isn't that done at the beginning of the year? It's not done. When is it done?
The teachers elect that in September, I believe.
Okay, so in September, you know who is going to get, who is selected what type, and that's a collective bargaining, correct?
And the budget is set in May and June.
Okay. I just don't understand why this is so hard to predict when we know exactly who elected to get what payment.
It's those 3 or 4 months in between when they make that election and when the budget is passed and when they make the election.
So they have made those determinations since the budget has been passed? How can that be? They could just change their cycle midway through the year? So instead of getting one lump sum payment in May, because some teachers elect to get a paycheck all summer.
And brand new teachers aren't hired until after the new budget is in place, because there's no money to hire them. So they can't make that election before.
Yeah. So what if this money wasn't there? What if there wasn't any money there to cover that? Who would? How would you pay for it? I mean, you're taking out of last year's contingency.
That's why we use the contingency.
To me, it just seems that there should be a better way of predicting this before we pass the budget. I mean,
I'm open to ideas.
how about there's a deadline that people have to elect that? I mean, that's my idea. I mean, it seems pretty simple.
Yeah, that would have to be negotiated with the teachers' union. We can certainly bring that to the school committee as a possibility, changing the time at which they make that determination. That still wouldn't affect the new teachers, though, that come on over the summer.
How many is that?
It varies from year to
Can't
year,
be that much.
and I don't have a number on that.
But this is our responsibility. So if it's our responsibility, why aren't we being a little bit more proactive? If this is it an annual occurrence?
Actually, I think this is the first time that we've had to change this, to modify this in my time here. You know, and I think I've ran into it at other times when I was over in the town of Chelmsford. We had to add in at the end of the year because the payroll changes, and people, as Ms. Moses pointed out, people that don't, you know, people that were hired prior to 1986 didn't pay into the Medicare system. So when they're replaced, you bring new people on. Changing staffing, changing the teachers' contribution levels, variety of issues that raise that.
How many employees are we talking about that? How many employees are we talking about that are covered by this $90,000 transfer? How many affected?
It's one line item. It affects either, we pay the tax for all the city employees, roughly 1,700 in the schools and another 800 here, 2,500 employees.
So you don't know? You don't know why you need this $90,000 other than we have to pay the tax?
No, I just told you that.
I asked you, how many employees? You're saying how many new employees came on, or how many decided to change things differently?
I don't think we have that number for you, Counselor.
Okay, can we
just know that there's a shortfall of $90,000 in this account that we, based upon the, I believe it's 1.3% or 2% that pays into the Medicare, that's tax that we owe the federal government.
Shouldn't we have a better idea? I mean, all of a sudden, end of year, we're just going to make that $90,000 transfer?
Well, Counselor, if you object to paying the federal government the Medicare tax payment, you can vote against the transfer.
No, I don't vote against that. I'm not opposed to this. I just want to know why we have to, all of a sudden, nobody seems to know why there's a shortfall. And I think if I were in your position, I would find out what the cause is, what the reason is, and how it doesn't happen again. Because otherwise...
Well, there's one way that could not happen again, and that was that we could increase the next year when we do the budget, we could increase the Medicare line up by a higher level to play it safe. We run these tight in order to, prepare a budget, and as it turns out, the payroll comes in. It's a percentage of payroll. That's how Medicare works. I'm not sure if you're aware of that, but that's how it works. And then we have to pay to the federal government.
Well, that apparently, if that's the way you want to solve it, then that's not how I would solve it.
Well, Counselor...
That's okay.
That's...
Because that's what you do with the taxes, too. You just, we'll just ballpark things.
No, we don't just ballpark things.
So, well, you ballpark, because we're not talking just a couple of thousand here, Mr. Manager. We're talking about $90,000. So I want to ask questions. I want to raise it. I want to know what the solution is. In order to do that, you have to find out what the cause was.
Mm-hmm.
So it would be good to know why there was this shortfall or what contributed to it. And I would like a report on that. And I'll make that...
I can make that a very simple...
I'll make that in the form of a motion, so to make sure we get the report.
Motion by Councilor Elliott,
Second.
seconded by Councilor Kennedy.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilor Kennedy.
Yeah, on the motion. So you making this transfer now, but you could have made this transfer in September, right? By September, and you just wait till...
No, the last week of the year, the school submits payrolls for all the teachers who are getting paid in July and August. So that, if you looked at the year-to-date expense report that was distributed to you during the budget process, you saw that we had close to $100,000 excess in that line. The next day, we're $90,000 short.
Okay.
That's what happens.
Okay. And that's because some people like to get paid over the summer, some people don't, and the summer straddles the 2 fiscal years.
Correct.
But by September, people have to have made that determination, right? By September, the teachers have to have made a determination about whether they want to get paid for the summer or not. Is that right?
Councilor Mendonça knows the answer to this, and I'll call upon him.
Councilor Mendonça.
In September, the teachers by contract can elect to get paid over 52 weeks. And then at the end of the school year, they can elect by contract to take the last 10 weeks in a lump sum at the end of June. But this happens late in the school year. I'm not sure, in the spring at least. I don't know if it's May or June, but they can elect to take a lump sum for their summer pay, where they have previously been getting paid on a 52-week schedule.
Okay, so then instead of September, it's June. You don't know until June, till the school year's done.
That's
because of collective bargaining. Okay.
And that's the answer that we've tried to provide.
We still have a motion to request that in the form of a report to the maker of the motion.
Maybe it's just easy to let me know how many people are affected or contribute to this margin, why there is that shortfall, okay? How many people, if you're saying, look, I don't want to belabor this issue. I just think it's important to understand exactly why we got to this margin. If you're saying, I mean, Mr. Moses, you're asking me for ideas. If on one day you have a $100,000 surplus, and then like that on the next day you got a $90,000 deficit, I would be looking at how or why that occurred. That's just me. And maybe you're just getting a bill based upon a percentage of the salaries, but in order to prevent that from happening, I would just like...
It's not a, Counselor, it's not a bill. It's a payment that we're required to make to the federal government based upon the payroll that is generated. And as Mr. Moses pointed out, if you looked at that year end, rough numbers, not year end, that year to date had 100,000. We still had several weeks, as was pointed out in the budget discussions, we had several weeks of payroll left. Then the teachers came in and had, a number of them took the payments over the summer that hit that fiscal year. So that payment then became due. It's not an exact science. We don't know when we do the budget in June that it's going to be to the penny, because things happen during the year. People that didn't pay in are replaced by people that have to pay in. That means we have to pay in. People take it in June, payment in June, as opposed to going through the summer. We don't know that because they elect to do that late in the year. The payroll can change during the year. There's a wide variety of reasons for this. The city of Lowell is not alone in this. This is the way the system works. But we can certainly try to come up with something, but those are the answers.
Councilor Laurie.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would just suggest at the end of the June, when you talk to the school department, just ask how many employees took the check and add that to the report. 105 teachers are going to take one check, and that would, now that we know the reason why, contractually we can't change it. So I would just, if the school department would just add the number of people, and that would, I would hope would be suffice.
All those in, excuse me, Councilor Kennedy?
Yeah, so it isn't really that big a deal. I mean, you're not gonna, because of collective bargaining, you're never gonna know until June. Right. So if it's June to July, it's only a month anyway, so it's just, and there's really no way of knowing, is there? It's at the, not the whim, but it depends on what the teachers do. So that's, right? So the best you can ever do is estimate.
Right.
That's all you can ever do. What we try and do, I don't know if this helps or not, but we try and put a contingency in, an account to handle unexpected things, especially toward the end of the year. I mean, that's what it's for. If we could predict everything to the penny, we wouldn't need any contingencies. Nobody would need a savings account. You wouldn't need any reserves. But these things happen.
All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Opposed? Aye. So voted. Next is a vote to amend Council Rule Number 14 regarding the order of the council agenda.
Move approval.
Motion to approve by Councilor Kennedy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councilor Marcia.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was just wondering why on the council rules we don't have a line for new business. Is this not allowed in the council floor? I know when you have different meetings, and I belong to different groups like the Friends of the Council on Aging, and sometimes we get reports from like the Cemetery Commission or something, and they always have new business. Is that not allowed in the council rules? I never gave it a thought, but I was recently on a City Life show, and they asked me why no new business.
It's in Robert rules.
And so I couldn't give him an answer, so I'm relying on my colleagues here to,
I would
I don't know.
assume it's because you need public notice, and you can't just bring up new business on the council floor. We have the...
Councilor Martin?
Yeah, I was going to say something similar. I think under the open meeting law, the items that are going to be discussed at the public meeting are required to be posted in advance with some specificity.
okay, that's good.
Go ahead.
Before we actually still have to take a vote on the transfer. We only took a vote on the actual motion there. So motion to approved by Councilor Broderick, seconded by Councilor Laurie. Roll call, please.
Mayor Murphy.
Yes.
Council Nguyen.
Yes.
Council Broderick.
Yes.
Council Elliott.
Yes.
Council Kennedy.
Yes.
Council Laurie.
Yes.
Council Martin.
Yes.
Council Mendonça.
Yes.
Council Mercia.
Yes.
That's 9 yeas.
Returning to the vote to amend Council Rule Number 14 regarding the order of the council agenda. Councilor Martin.
Move to approve.
Motion to approve by Councilor Martin, seconded by Councilor Laurie. Councilor Mendonça.
Just a question. I have no objection to what's on here, but given items in this week's agenda, shouldn't there be an item for communication from the auditor? Is that something not on agenda.net, or?
The clerk and I just discussed that
Okay.
during the meeting, and we'd have to just make an amendment at a later time.
Okay, very good. I'd support that.
Sure. Roll call, please.
Mr. Mayor, just prior to the
Councilor.
roll call, this change we're making to accommodate the software for the agenda, right? That's the only reason for this. As far as new business goes, I think that the way the council rules are is that there's not a line item, there's not an agenda item that says new business. But I do believe that during the city manager's portion of the agenda, city councils can bring up any item that they want to the city manager. And so that would be, it would mean that the city manager would be able to,
I don't believe that.
I believe that.
Has to be in the packet, isn't it?
I don't think so. I think the council rules read that way. And you know, you've been here longer than me, so you may know better than I, but I think that that's the way that it is, that if a city councilor has something that they want to bring up, they can bring it up at that time, which doesn't mean that the city manager needs to respond at that time. He can respond at the next meeting, but that the item can be brought up during that part of the agenda. That's what I think.
How is that not?
Mr. Manager.
I know this is a council rule issue, but how is that not a motion then? How does that differentiate? Then why would a councilor file a motion as opposed to simply bring it up during the city manager?
Well, for instance, you may recall that during this meeting and during the city manager's portion of the agenda, I asked about the trees out in Pawtucketville that were cut on the last day of the fiscal year. There was no motion. But I still brought the matter up, and there'll be a report at the next meeting. So that would be one example.
Maybe
it
I
was
shouldn't
illegally
have reported
done.
then.
Right. And I think there's questions about whether that can happen under the open meeting law.
Generally, the purpose of sticking to the agenda and what is in the packet is so that citizens have an opportunity to see what is going to be discussed and would have the opportunity then to also weigh in on what is being discussed.
I understand that, but in that instance, that's just a dialogue, and there was no action taken by the council. There's just discussion, and that's it. So I don't see it as a violation of the open meeting law for that reason. If a vote was taken for something that was not on the agenda, that would be a different thing. But in this instance, it's just asking for an action at a future meeting. I don't really see the problem with that.
I think it's just good practice that people that may want to weigh in on a particular issue, whether or not we're going to actually take a vote on it, that we stick to what's on the agenda and what's in the packet. Madam Solicitor?
Sure. I understand the point and the distinction that you're making, and there are times where counselors might bring up, say, a public service message where there's an event that's going to take place, and things like that would be permissible, I think, even under the new open meeting law standards. However, with an open meeting law, even if there wasn't actually a vote, participation could include such things as discussion, any deliberation on a point. If somebody brought something up and the council began deliberating upon it, even if the council hadn't yet taken action, that would still constitute action for the purposes of an open meeting. And for the purposes of the open meeting law, the intention is to give the public notice that there is going to be that type of discussion or deliberation. Again, I think things that are more, well wishes when we have a Lowellian competing to get into the Olympics, something like that is perfectly benign and okay. But a matter that would be discussed or deliberated, even if not acted upon, should be publicly noticed. Our rules, and they could be sort of reviewed maybe again, predate, of course, all of these changes to the open meeting law, and that's perhaps why they're in there. So you may very well be correct that that's what's allowed under our rules, but since that time, the changes to the open meeting law have an impact on those things.
Any further discussion under Councilor Kennedy?
Yeah, it's Rule 13 is the council rule, which these rules were just adopted and approved by the law department, by the way, and adopted by this city council just within the past couple of months. And Rule 13 reads, at the end of each city council agenda, each city council shall have the privilege of propounding questions of municipal importance to the city manager, restricted to items on the agenda.
Restricted to items on the agenda.
That's
yes.
The important part, I think.
Well, let me just, if I can, let me just point out that also during this meeting, we had a lengthy discussion about central parking and about the auditing at central parking. Now, that was not on the agenda, and that was taken up under communications from the city manager, although there was no communication from the city manager on that.
Right, there is a public, everything that is, even in the communications, is distributed publicly. It may indeed be, and it's a discussion I've had actually with the clerk, it may indeed be a better practice, and I think it is, to list what those communications are. There is, of course, a summary, and then all the communications themselves are public. But regardless, I don't think the test is necessarily who submits the communication. The fact that the communication is there and can be discussed and deliberated is what is important. So in other words, if I sent a communication to the council, but it ended up triggering questions to the manager, which could likely happen, all of that is fine, regardless of whether I was here or not.
Councilor Broderick.
Thank you. I think the difficulty here is that if we point to specific examples of things that are going on, that doesn't necessarily mean that proves that our procedure is proper, and I think the difficulty becomes enforcement. And sometimes if someone brings something in and others are thinking, that's not on the agenda, we shouldn't be talking about it, we're not necessarily going to shut the person down. And I think that's kind of a self-policing issue as well, that people don't want to be the one to say, wait a minute, we can't talk about that, because then it seems like we're cutting off public discussion. And I think that, let's face it, that looks bad, and that's why I think some things go on that quite frankly shouldn't. And, whether those two things that happened tonight should or shouldn't have, I don't think they should have. But if I raise it, there'd be a story in the paper that I'm cutting off communication, and there must be a reason for it. So that's what happens, let's face it, because it's allowed doesn't mean it's proper or it's within the rules. And I think that we all have to kind of remember that and self-police. But just talking about Rule 13 right now, I don't have a copy in front of me. It wasn't on the agenda. And I think this, aside from the public meeting, open meeting laws, I think there's also an issue of fairness and level playing field that, you know, if someone's prepared to come in and talk about an issue and the others aren't, wouldn't necessarily, it's not fair. That's just the two issues, you know, and I think we just have to be careful of any abuse there. Thank you.
Any further discussion on the vote? Councilor Elliott.
Just a clarification, Madam Solicitor. I mean, if we've done this in the past, I don't know whether it's appropriate or not, but this body can suspend the rules and bring in, which we have done, items that are not on the agenda, either because we meet every other week or there might be a sense of urgency. That's permissible, isn't it?
What the open meeting law, again, is designed to do, and what it encourages municipalities to do, is to put everything on the agenda. And it does recognize, I think, that sometimes things come up that might not be that are time sensitive, and that when those things happen, you're encouraged to amend your agenda as soon as possible if it's something that requires immediate action. I don't recall too many instances of that happening. Again, generally speaking, when the rules have been suspended, they have been suspended, but it is not something that the public would have normally weighed in on. Again, I was using the example of Councilor Lowry's motion to suspend to send well wishes to somebody.
Right.
Things of that nature. Sometimes there might be, and again, there have been lengthy discussions of things that are communications that are in the packet, and that's perfectly, as Councilor Kennedy was pointing out, you can ask as many questions, and there was a lengthy questioning regarding those things in the packet, and those are fine.
Thank you.
Councilor Lowry.
Thank you. One thing that was interesting tonight, we did bring up, and the manager did answer questions that wasn't in the packet, and that was on the taxes, the tax bills that went out. But interestingly enough, we did get this from the manager with all the councilors' taxes on it. So I assume you expected it to come up in conversation.
Yes, Pete.
One way or another. Thank you.
Any further discussion on the vote? Roll call, please.
Mayor Murphy.
Yes.
Councilor Nguyen.
Yes.
Councilor Broderick.
Yes.
Councilor Elliott.
Yes.
Councilor Kennedy.
Yes.
Councilor Lowry.
Yes.
Councilor Martin.
Yes.
Councilor Mendonça.
Yes.
Councilor Mercia.
Yes.
It's 9 yeas.
Thank you. Do we have any subcommittee reports? Seeing none, move on to claims. Under general petitions, we have 3 claims for property damage and 2 claims for personal injury. Entertain a motion to refer to the Law Department for report and recommendation by Councilor Mercia, seconded by Councilor Noon. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed? So voted. On the motions section of the agenda, we have Councilor Mendonça requests the city manager obtain an updated inventory of double poles. Excuse me. Under utility petitions, we have 1 pole location for National Grid, Verizon New England, request to install 1 pole at Wilder Street.
Public hearing.
Entertain a motion to refer to a public hearing on July 24th at 7 p.m.
So move.
So moved by Councilor Kennedy, seconded by Councilor Mendonça. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed? So voted. Motion by Councilor Mendonça. Request the city manager obtain an updated inventory of double poles from each utility company that owns the poles in Lowell for comparison with the lists from March. Seconded by Councilor Kennedy. Councilor Mendonça.
As it states, just get an updated list, and then if we see that there are polls from the previous list still on the current list, we want to know why it's taken so long to address them.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed? So voted. We have a motion by Councilor Lowry to request the city manager locate a location and review costs for an adult recreation park.
Second.
Seconded by Councilor Kennedy. Councilor Lowry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Actually, this is an article I've received from someone here in the city, Mary Margaret Barrett, and she sent me this article on adult recreation parks, and I guess they're going up now around the country. And what they are, it's basically like a playground for adults, but it's recreation. Talking to Councilor Kennedy earlier in the week, they used to have one on Boylston Street behind Shed Park. They would have different stages you would go. You might have something to do, chin-ups on one and things like that. And I thought it might be an idea for the city. A couple of weeks ago, Assistant to the City Manager Adam Bakey was talking about 50% of Lowell is apartments, and we have a large influx of people in their 30s, 40s, and so on, buying condos and homes in the city. So to me, it would make sense to at least have some type of area where they could engage in some physical activity. But I'd also like to add, which I didn't see in the article, things like maybe a shuffleboard for some of the people who might like shuffleboards or bocce courts and things like that. But I think it would be a good use of a park in the city to have something for our adults, probably on the bus line, and a shaded area where people could play shuffleboard or bocce courts, or have these type of equipment where people could go, adults, and just have a good time. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Kennedy and then Councilor Mercier.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think this is a very good motion by Councilor Laurie. I think the idea of bocce courts and shuffleboard courts and other things like that are really would be a pleasant addition to a lot of different parks in the city, and so it's well worth it. I mean, you see, if you go down to Central Park in New York City, you see a lot of bocce courts down there and shuffleboard, and you see a lot of bocce courts also near the north end off Commercial Street. Both those are very popular games, and as far as I know, no place in the city do we have those types of facilities. And so if we could do that, you know, I mean, we're midway through the summer, I guess, but if we could plan that maybe for next year, I think that would be just great.
Councilor Mercier.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think that any city park after 11 o'clock is an adult recreation park, but be that as it may. Just couldn't resist saying that, but.
I worded it that way. I figured someone would say move to approve.
But anyways, it shows that Councilor Laurie is thinking, and the parks should be for all ages, but before 11 o'clock. I'm sorry.
So am I. Any further discussion on the motion? Councilman Donta.
I'm no objection to getting a report or having additional activities at our parks. I'm just concerned about, does the adult recreation park means that we prohibit other ages from using the park or something like that? When I read this, that's what I understood, is that there'd be a park where maybe children are precluded or younger adults.
Councilor Laurie.
No, not at all. What it is the equipment that you install is basically more orientated towards older folks, not so much slides and swings, but they used to have the old chin-up courts and things like that. The equipment installed is more for people over, say, 15, 18, even 21. But no, you don't exclude anyone at all, no.
Bit of self-interest involved, though.
What's that?
Bit of self-interest involved, though, over 21?
Well, I want to see, you know, with the councilors, usually if something's going to open, you'll see many of the councilors show up and take part. I wonder if we do put this recreation, how many people will show up and at least use the equipment the first day. But no, you wouldn't exclude anyone. Matter of fact, some of the areas I thought about, it would be great to put in some of the parks in the city where, you know, the adults could come with their kids while the kids are on the swings and slides. It'd be something for the adults to do too, so no exclusion. Thank you.
All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed? So voted. Last item on the agenda. Excuse me.
Thank you,
Councilor Mercier.
Mr. Mayor, before we get into the last item on the agenda, which is to go into executive session, I'd like to suspend the rules and discuss the issue of the vote 17, if I could.
So move.
Motion to suspend by Councilor Elliott, second by Councilor Mercia.
Thank you,
All
Mr.
those in
Mayor.
favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed? So voted. Councilor Mercia.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is the Vote 17 campaign that is blazing the city and the state, and no doubt the nation. On March 13th of this year, this council supported a resolution to go on record in support of House Bill 1111, an act allowing citizens 17 years or older to vote in the city of Lowell's municipal election. Now, UTEC and the Vote 17 citizens asked for our help at that time, and we gave it to them. Well, they're asking for our help once again, and I received an email just the other night, and it was well after I couldn't make a motion. It was too late. They're asking once again for that last effort to push the bill to the House floor by sending a joint letter to the House Speaker DeLeo, thanking him for working with the city of Lowell, and to please bring House Bill 1111 to the House floor to make the necessary amendments that the city solicitor, Christine O'Connor, made for the bill to be engrossed. So the House Counsel says that because of these changes, the bill can be amended on the House floor, and since the new language that Christine put forth is adequately addresses the concerns of the Secretary of State, they are now set to ask the Speaker to please advance the bill out of the third reading. So that's what this letter would do. There are only 3 weeks left to accomplish their latest goal. Time is of the essence. And I'm not working here on a motion because I think that's illegal. So I am just thinking out loud to somehow, if it would be possible, that a letter would go on our behalf to Speaker DeLeo just to get it out of the third reading. So I'm not actually making a motion, but I'm just making, thinking out loud that possibly this might happen. I'm kind of like violating the rules without actually doing that. So I don't know, maybe someone heard what I said and a letter might be compiled to help the Vote 17. That's all because time is of the essence, or I would have made a motion. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
The mayor's office can hypothetically work on a motion, on a letter to draft up and forward to.
That's so wonderful.
Councilor
I
Elliott.
don't think we're violating any major open meeting law. Are we, Madam Solicitor? I mean, we've supported this in the past. I make a motion that we support and we do have to vote on it.
I think it would be helpful, actually, given what they're probably looking for, to get a vote of the council on it. And again, it's nothing new. It has gone through public hearings, and this is, again, more of a last minute, 3 weeks to go, housekeeping matter.
Motion by Councilor Elliott, second by Councilor Mercia.
Thank you very much. I
All those in
appreciate
favor,
it.
signify by saying aye. Opposed? So voted. The last item, excuse me, Councilor Mendoza.
While under the suspension of the rules,
Under suspension.
I received a letter at home, I don't know if other councils did, from the Portuguese colonial band, which existed many years ago and seems to be revived. They're fundraising for scholarships for musicians. They're working through the cultural organization of Lowell Cool. So anyone that would like to help them out in that effort, if you could contact Cool, they'll put you in touch with the right people in order to help them raise the funds for the scholarships. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else under suspension? Councilor.
Mr. Mayor, if I could just simply say that the farmers market is back at the JFK Plaza. It's bringing the country into the city. CTI sponsors that, and it's every Friday for the next few weeks, and it's from 2 in the afternoon to 7 in the evening, and I think it's a great venue, a great take for the city, as well as the busker stop that is providing live performances on Fridays, Fresh Air Fridays, to go to the different outside seating areas. And you'll see those busk signs in 6 locations around the city. So if people see that, come on down and have a good meal in the fresh air downtown, support our local businesses, and get some entertainment at the same time. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The last item on the agenda, hopefully, is executive session regarding the litigation report, public discussion of which could have a detrimental effect on the city's position. Entertain a motion to enter into executive session to adjourn after.
So moved.
So moved by Council Broderick, second by Council Laurie. Roll call, please.
Mayor Murphy.
Yes.
Council Nguyen.
Yes.
Council Broderick.
Yes.
Council Elliott.
Yes.
Council Kennedy.
Yes.
Council Laurie.
Yes.
Council Martin.
Yes.
Council Mendonça.
Yes.
Council Mercia.
Yes.
That's 9 yeas.
Thank you.
Question.